Mismatched eyes, an extra finger, uncombable hair, human features have a seemingly infinite amount of variety, but some traits are rarer than others. Keep watching to learn about the rarest of them all. When somebody's eyes seem to be two different colors, it could be they're wearing novelty contact lenses, or it could be that their eyes really do have different hues, a condition called heterochromia. When we talk about eye color, we're really talking about the iris, the ring of muscle that surrounds the pupil and lets light into the eye. The color of the iris is determined by the pigment melanin. More melanin equals a darker eye color. The amount of melanin in the iris is determined by a combination of genes. Most people have the same melanin content in both eyes, and so their eye colors match. But a genetic mutation can cause one eye to vary from the other. Heterochromia can cause a color variation within one iris, or partial heterochromia, as a minor difference between eyes, or complete heterochromia. When it occurs at birth, heterochromia usually doesn't come with other symptoms or any health issues, though an exam is warranted to rule out underlying problems. Maybe there's no accounting for taste, but we do know that about 25% of the population has a higher density of taste buds on their tongue than the average person, according to the Harvard School of Public Health. Also known as super tasters, they're particularly sensitive to bitter flavors. In lab tests, they're repulsed by the bitterness of certain chemicals that other people can't taste at all. Being a super taster seems to be something of a mixed blessing. Because of their sensitivity to flavor, they tend to consume fewer high-sugar, high-fat foods, which is a plus for health. They also tend to dislike alcohol and tobacco. On the other hand, their sensitivity to bitterness can cause super tasters to avoid healthy vegetables, which may have a bitter taste. They don't like spicy foods. Their extra taste buds include extra pain sensors and tend to use more salt, which masks bitterness. It's a right-handed world we live in. About 90% of people are right-handed, according to the American Psychological Association. Most of the remaining 10% are left-handed. The truly ambidextrous, those who can perform all tasks equally well with either hand, make up the rarest handedness category of all, numbering just 1%.
I am not left-handed.
Why do most of us have a dominant hand? The answer's unclear, but seems related to the way our brain is divided into two hemispheres. Keeping specific functions on one side or the other means information doesn't have to cross over. Our genes influence which hand we favor, but other factors, including just random chance, also play a role. So two left-handed parents can have a right-handed child, and identical twins can have opposite hand preferences. While the ability to use both hands equally well for everything may seem, handy, it's possible that being ambidextrous comes with drawbacks. One study published in Neuropsychologia found that ambidextrous kids do worse on tests of verbal, math, and reading skills than right or left-handers, while other research published by Wiley periodicals showed that ambidextrous people have greater declines in brain volume with age.
Oh, there's something I ought to tell you. Tell me. I'm not left-handed either.
Musical notes, an A-flat, an F-sharp, a middle C, aren't like colors. You know red or green when you see them, but hearing an isolated tone doesn't provide enough information for someone to identify where the pitch falls on the musical scale, unless you happen to be among the 1 out of 10,000 people born with the talent of absolute pitch. Also known as perfect pitch, this capability isn't only rare, it can be lost if it isn't paired with musical training at an early age. Usually this means music lessons starting at age 5. After age 9, successfully developing absolute pitch is unlikely. Some languages, like Mandarin or Vietnamese, use pitch to convey meaning, and people who are native speakers of such tonal languages are more likely to develop absolute pitch. Genetics may also play a role, and according to a study published in the scientific journal Cognition, people can be trained to identify pitch, though their accuracy may not be as great as someone born with the ability.
All music is maths, really. Come on, I'll teach you the next bit.
For somebody with absolute pitch, an E-flat or A natural is as recognizable as the voice of a friend. But that's not always a good thing. With perfect pitch, imperfection in music can be distracting. One study published in the scientific journal Cortex found that people with absolute pitch performed worse on a task if it was preceded by musical notation and a tone that didn't match. Depending on where you live, having second toes that are longer than your big toes might not be rare at all. It might be the norm, or statistically close to it. But given how much attention was paid a few years back when Meghan Markle wore sandals which revealed second toes that dared to go beyond the big toes, it's probably a good idea to put this trait in perspective. The condition is known as Morton's toe, but it's not actually the case that the second toe is longer. According to the New York Times, it means that the bone in your foot that attaches to your big toe is on the short side, keeping toe number 1 from taking point. Because this feature was often represented in Greek sculpture and art, it's also been called the Greek toe, according to Healthline. A study published in the academic journal Rheumatology found that it occurs among 62% of men and 32% of women in Greece. Another study published in the Journal of Social, Evolutionary, and Cultural Psychology found that it occurred in 42% of a group of college students. Oh, and you know who has it? The Statue of Liberty. If you want to start a trend of calling it Liberty's toe, we won't stop you. We're in the midst of an epidemic of sleepiness, with more than a third of Americans not getting enough hours of sleep every night, according to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. They recommend that all adults have at least 7 hours of restful sleep per night, but a lucky few, about 5% of the general population, are able to wake up refreshed and rested with just 4 to 6 hours of sleep. These naturally short sleepers seem to have mutations in genes that affect cells in the brain which regulate sleep. When researchers placed these genes into lab mice, the animals slept less than their unaltered peers. Most people who try to get by with so little sleep will end up feeling sleep deprived, but people with this genetic quirk seem to have a more efficient sleep cycle, enabling them to get the benefits of a good night's sleep in less time than the rest of us. Understanding how this works could lead to better treatments for people with sleep problems, and maybe help us all get by with less sack time. Professor of neurology, Dr. Ying Huifu, told Scientific American, "We know sleep is necessary for survival. We don't know anything about how it's regulated."
You need healthy, natural sleep. Choose some valerian root and get more exercise.
As far as mutations go, this one is both hard to ignore and, generally, not very impactful beyond its effects on someone's appearance. Someone affected by piebaldism has a lack of melanocytes, the cells that produce hair pigment, in portions of their hair usually above the forehead in the front of their hairline, producing a white forelock. Sometimes the eyebrows or eyelashes are also affected, and the nearby skin may lack pigment as well. Usually this phenomenon is present at birth and lasts all throughout life. Piebaldism is different from vitiligo, which occurs when the immune system attacks melanocytes in the skin and produces unpigmented skin patches. Piebaldism doesn't produce any ill effects, aside from affected skin being more vulnerable to sunburn and the development of skin cancers. What color is 7? What does a piano solo taste like? These questions may seem nonsensical to most of us, but a person with synesthesia might see a color when they read a word or hear music. Or they might experience a sensation of taste when hearing a certain sound, or hear a specific noise whenever they smell a particular scent. Synesthesia is a condition in which the stimulation of one sense automatically triggers another sensory experience. It occurs in 3 to 5% of the population, reports Psychology Today, and isn't a form of mental illness or disorder. Many people consider it a gift. Synesthesia can be experienced in a wide variety of ways. Sounds can trigger colors, or words can trigger tastes.
So for me, music and words kind of have colours and textures and forms.
A hallmark of synesthesia is that, for a person who has it, the experience is consistent. If the letter A is green for you, it will always be green. Brain imaging studies suggest that people with this trait have extra connections between parts of the brain that process different senses. Flavorful herb or vile weed? The spice cilantro isn't for everybody, especially since some people have a gene that causes the plant to have a gross soap-like flavor for them. In a study published in 2012, researchers examined genetic data from about 30,000 people who answered questions about their attitude toward cilantro. They found that a particular gene variant tended to be found in people who described cilantro as tasting soapy or who disliked the taste of fresh cilantro. The gene in question is involved in sensing the odor of a particular type of chemical found in the spice. Genetic traits don't completely determine one's feelings towards cilantro, NPR reported, but they're probably part of the equation. Cilantro haters, or people who cook for them, can try to rehab the herb by crushing the plant before using it, which can break down the chemical compounds that trigger the soapy flavor. About 1 in 500 infants is born with an extra finger or toe, a condition called polydactyly. Sometimes this occurs with no other anomalies, but it can also be part of a syndrome that produces other abnormalities.
I do not mean to pry, but you don't by any chance happen to have 6 fingers on your right hand?
Extra digits can be removed surgically, but a study published in Nature suggests that in some cases, having 6 fingers on a hand, something that occurs in 0.02% of the population, can be a benefit. Researchers tested the manual dexterity of 2 people who each had 6 fingers on both hands. Compared to a small group of 5-fingered people, the test subjects were able to perform more complex movements and could do some tasks with one hand that normally require 2. MRI scans showed that the extra fingers had their own muscles, tendons, and nerves. Study author Etienne Bourdet said in a press release, "Extra fingers and toes are traditionally seen as a birth defect, so nobody has thought to study how useful they might really be."
I think it's good because my hand's bigger than other hands.
Ever heard of Jumping Frenchmen of Maine? No, that's not the name of an indie pop band. JFM is actually a rare disorder in which someone who's surprised has an uncontrollable, exaggerated response to being startled. Somebody with this condition might jump or scream at an unexpected sound or a sudden poke. The symptoms begin after puberty, but become less severe with age. Not a lot is known about this very rare ailment. It was first identified among a group of French-Canadian lumberjacks working in Maine camps. But similar behavior has been documented in Louisiana, Malaysia, Siberia, India, and other parts of the world. It may be a genetic disorder, but cultural and environmental factors might also play a role in how the condition is expressed. While some of us struggle with hair that's unruly, uncooperative, or maybe needs some styling to achieve the look we want, there are people with a rare disorder who literally cannot tame their lion-like mane.
Do you like your hair?
Well, it's crazy and I like it.
It's called Uncombable hair syndrome, the result of genetic mutations which affect proteins that form the hair shafts on the head, though luckily nowhere else on the body.
Our girls have uncombable hair.
Instead of the usual rounded cross-section, people with this syndrome grow hair with a cross-section that makes it impossible for the hair to be combed flat. The hair, which tends to be blonde or straw-colored, stands out from the scalp in a stuck-a-finger-in-an-electric-socket kind of way. Fortunately, this condition isn't usually associated with any health problems. It typically starts in childhood and usually improves, or even goes away, at the onset of puberty. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Health Digest videos about interesting stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.